our goal, our jobs as professionals is to erase the uncertainty and provide lots of certainty, right? Even if we aren't certain, we have to provide systems to give them certainty. Welcome to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping overwhelmed outdoor living professionals, landscapers, and hardscapers just like you increase your closing rate to over 75% without doubling your workload so you can build a seven-figure business that doesn't need you. I'm your host, Joshua Gillow. Let's dig in. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. I have Ryan King on from King Landscape Design today, and we're going to discuss something that I know that really beat me up a lot when I first started in the industry, and even in the middle times, right? It was about this idea of why was I seeing so many other guys out there getting those big, juicy jobs, and I was struggling to get them. Like I was struggling to get projects that were over $50,000. And I kept banging my head against the wall thinking like, what do they have that I didn't? I thought in the beginning it was the fact that maybe they had a degree in landscape architecture and I didn't, so they got the good ones. Or maybe it's because they just happen to know people more than I did or whatever it was. And you know what I found out over the time was that was all bullshit. The reality was that I wasn't staying in my lane. I was trying to do everything myself. So I wanted to bring Ryan here on to talk about how integrating somebody else into your team, especially for the design side. Because if you're an amazing builder, if you love building really cool stuff, but you don't love the design part, why are you doing it? Like, why? Why are you not delegating that to somebody in your team or outsourcing it to someone like Ryan in order to get that piece nailed down? Imagine if you could bring a design back to Mrs. Jones that just knocked her socks off and you didn't have to put any time into it. Imagine that. So Ryan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Josh. Thanks for having me. This is a great opportunity.
No, I love talking to you, brother. Your heart's in the right place, and I love what you're doing for the industry, and I love that you're, that you're helping so many. So, I mean, really, at the end of the day, I'd love to get deeper into why you think most guys are struggling with trying to get those bigger jobs, and you see it from a different angle, and I'd love to see and get your perspective on that.
Yeah, totally. And just like you're saying, the biggest thing that I found over the years is just outsourcing the things that either you might not be the best at or that you're not passionate about. Because you could spin your wheels around and around. Say you were a design build contractor and your passion was really just getting out there, getting dirty, putting the shovel in the ground and building those projects. But you were just like, hey, I'm really dragging on these designs, but you want to offer the designs on yourself. So the biggest thing is just taking advantage of the community around you and reaching out to other people who can help you excel in those areas that you might not be that proficient at. So for example, on a design perspective, say you're a designer and maybe you struggle with landscaping and you're not really passionate about plants. You could always reach out to, say, horticulturists or people local to that area who know those native plants. And they could put together an incredible plant palette for you, and you could put it together in your design. And then that's just going to make you both work that much better. But most importantly, give a homeowner incredible experience on the product you're offering.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right with that. And I know that in the beginning, though, for me at least, and I was designing and doing all that in-house, it was, oh man, I always had this thought in my head, like nobody's going to do it like I do. Like even when I brought designer into the team and started to grow that, that relationship, and I was like, but how do you transfer the way I solve problems into that person? Like how do you do that? And I was so self-focused at that time, thinking that I was so important and I was the only one, that it stopped me for years from making that decision and that leap and and gave me the power to finally delegate that responsibility. And once I realized it really isn't about me, and the fact that others are even better at this than I was. Oh my goodness, that took a little bit of humbling, right? I had a big old slice of humble pie there. So
exactly.
How do you find when contractors come to you to start design for them, and they finally got to the part where like, I just can't anymore? Because usually it's something big, right? You get to a point where you have either all these projects and you can't get to them all, and then all of a sudden you start seeing projects popping out, and they're like, sorry, Josh, we're not waiting any longer. We got to go with somebody else. And you start feeling that pain. You're like, I got to do something. And then all of a sudden you make that big shift. Imagine if it didn't have to be that way. Imagine if it could be done purposefully and in a way that like, hey, I'm logically thinking this out. I know that's not my strong suit. I like it, but it's not my strong suit. Right. I need to get somebody in that seat that can actually do it for me. So when do you see
Yeah.
contractors like getting to that point before they're like, all right, just do something here, like help me out? Like
Yeah.
how do they come to you
Yeah.
usually?
Right. Yeah. And so the number one thing I always hear from contractors when they reach out is just that they can't keep up with the amount of design work that they have on their plate. And either homeowners are starting to tell them, hey, you're taking too long, we're gonna go talk to another contractor, or maybe they just simply don't have time to get around to it at all. So the contractors that I really work with are usually people who are building during the day, they were trying to design at night, or they were trying to find a local designer to hire in-house to bring onto their team. But the biggest thing I hear is just the turnaround time for homeowners. So as you know, when a homeowner is excited about any project, not even in the landscaping industry, they usually want it
Hmm.
instantly. So if they can find a way to entertain that homeowner, even if you're booking projects 3 to 4 or 5 months out, we can entertain that homeowner with 3D design, renderings, video fly-throughs, things of that nature to really keep them excited about that project throughout that whole phase. So the biggest point, regardless of any position you're in, is just the homeowner standards of, are you keeping them waiting and are you keeping them excited about that project in order to carry on through? Because the more excited that homeowner is, the more happier they're going to be with your company and the more willing they're going to be to just expand on the
Man, you hit on
projects.
something that is critical. I hope the listeners are listening close here. If you get a client and they're all excited and you're going to tell them, hey, it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks to do a design, because you're busy. That's just what it is. What you got to
Right.
realize is not just the fact that that's true for you, but the fact that Mrs. Jones now has to
Yeah.
wait all that time, which you're giving her time to do other things, A, with the money and B, with her mind. So the goal is always speed
Exactly.
to lead. How fast can you go from, hi, Mrs. Jones, to here's your design, to hey, let's get started with the construction, right? The speed is important right there. So if you leave her go, and I used to do this too. I can't even tell people that are doing it wrong because I used to do this where I'd be like, yeah, Mrs. Jones, I'll be back to you in 4 to 6 weeks. Well, you know what? I wouldn't touch base with that person the entire time because I'm working on the design. I got
Mhm.
other designs to get out, all that kind of stuff. And then all around,
Yeah.
usually around week 4, 4.5, I start getting emails and texts like, hey, when's that design coming out? Like she has to, or he has to
Yep.
reach out to us. And you know that it already takes
Yeah.
guts to do that. Like they have to like, all right, well, let's
Right.
kick the bear. Let's see if he's still doing our stuff or whether he ran away with our money. Like we don't know. Customers don't know.
Yes.
So
Yep.
you put them in a state of
Right.
uncertainty. And we never want to put our clients in a
Mhm.
state of uncertainty. Our goal, our jobs as professionals is to erase the uncertainty and provide lots of certainty, right? Even if we aren't certain, we have to provide systems to give them certainty. So if you let them just hang for the longest time and say nothing and be like, yeah, I'll get back to you. I got like 2 weeks and I'm going to get that out. All right, that's that. And then nothing happens again in the 2 weeks. And you finally land on the day, April 1st, it's due, and you drop it in the evening in their mailbox if you're on time. And then they're already fed up with you, even though you did exactly what you said you were going to do. But to your point, even if you aren't hiring somebody like Ryan, but you are doing your own design work, if you drip information to them, either by saying, guys, look, you're next up, we're working on you next week. It's going to take me about a week. Bear with me, like keeping them in the conversation. And if you want to level up one level, as you mentioned earlier, start dripping like little videos or little snapshots of the design as you're going. Man, you talk about building up. Oh, they
And they
love it.
love
They
it.
start foaming at the mouth for that stuff.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're building
Yep.
this trust and this like, oh my goodness, he cares. She cares. This is going to be amazing. Like, I like what I'm seeing, but I haven't seen the whole thing. It's almost like a trailer to a movie, right?
Yeah. It's a sneak
Exactly.
peek.
A sneak peek. So you guys out there listening, if you're not doing that yet, it doesn't take a whole lot to do that. And you can delegate that to somebody in your team, but just to be dripping on Mrs. Jones that you can give her little stuff as you're going along and trying to keep that as fast as possible back to her will keep her excited and you're building momentum as opposed to just dropping this into a 4 to 6 month silent abyss that her mind's going all over the place
Right.
and thinking like, well, did they take me for my money? Am I even going to like it? My friends say that I don't need a design.
Yeah.
The other guy's going to do it for free. And this guy, like all of this brain trash happens. They're human.
Yeah.
But if you can alleviate
Yeah,
all of that
exactly.
by dripping them as you go in this process. So I love that you brought that up because
Yeah.
it is so true.
Yeah, and I mean, those sneak peeks are such a good way just to interact with the homeowner too. Because I mean, once you're deep into a design, I mean, if you're like me, my mind is just so focused on that project, I kind of forget about keeping communication with the homeowner. So
Yeah.
I'm like halfway through the project, I'm like, hey, let's send them a quick black and white 3D image of where the design's
Yeah.
at so far. It just has a little sneak peek, and the reactions they send back to you, they just are absolutely loving it. And you might be a week into it and they're just patiently waiting for the whole design. But even if you send
Yep.
them that sneak peek, it's just one great way to just really kind of win
It's
them
true.
over.
And you have to think of two perspectives here, listeners, two perspectives. Yours as the designer, and you're like, oh, I'm so excited about this. I'm going to just hold it to the end and let them see everything at once. Like inside, you're just boiling with excitement. And the homeowner is not part of that excitement circle, if you will. For them, it's, I haven't heard from him or her in a long, long time. And their mind starts going to the negative. So if you can keep pulling them along and building that momentum, like we're talking about, man, when you put that presentation together and you sit down with them, it's incredible to see the difference between, I don't know if he's going to show up and do anything, and I can't wait to see the final thing because I've been dripped all this information and these sneak peeks that you're driving me crazy. Yeah,
Exactly. And it's such a cool reaction too, because I mean, it's going to lead to so much more, because they're going to tell their friends about it. They'll tell their family about it, especially when the project's done and they're sitting around the patio. They'll be showing them those designs or images that you sent them and be like, look how incredible this all turned out.
Plus they're showing their family. They're starting to look outside. They're boiling into it. We always talk about the design part of this conversation with your customers. The design part is the fantastical, it's the fantasy. We have to be careful. We have to have a framework, an idea of what budget looks like. We do that through the sales process. We have a framework. We've got some guardrails up. We know about where we need to be. But in the beginning, we want to have them understand and see this design, if you will, in a bit of a bubble. And bear with me here, this fantastical bubble of what could be, without saying bubble equals X amount of $1,000 to do this. And all of a sudden, like, I love it, but don't want to spend that much money. Like, they have to live in that fantastical for a little while in the design process with rough ranges, things like that they can be like, oh, if I could do something like that, but they have to live in that the fantasy land. And then eventually, obviously, reality has to set in, but we do that after they start getting really